Nigan kakio ginaraskom no. Emimten emiasiganotsom egiska gaman elanaskom an tahta giska man monskaya. Ego matsona semi negakota giska semanto emigoya. Good morning, everybody. I have to speak in my language. I'm a residential school survivor, and many of you know we were never allowed to speak our language in the schools. So our elders, our parents always told us, if you ever address anybody, speak your language because you're always prevented back then. It's hard, I'm only given 20 minutes. I can speak here forever. But anyway, I'm grateful. My Cree name is Wawasenam. It was bestowed upon me in 2014. Can I get some Kleenex? I don't see any Kleenex if there's. But anyway, I'm grateful. Maybe Fran, if you have any. Oh, there we go. These lights are hot. But I'm grateful. My Cree name is Wawasenam. And I want to give you a kind of a small, reason why it became. I took that name, I was given that name. I've never had a Cree name all these years. I just had a number when I was in residential school. But, and we were referred to that and as we went to our classes by your number, not your name. So it's almost like a prison. I've never been in prison, but it just sounds like it. But when the time came before my late brother, my brother was a chief for almost 20 years. And he said, before he passed away in 2013, he said, someone needs to take my place. But before that, in 2002, Solo asked me if I could share a little bit of my story. He was a diabetic, and he was, I'll say he couldn't, his life was taken away by diabetes, and he was always taking dialysis. And one day in 2002, he was told, Jerry, you only have about a few months to live. And it really devastated him because he was a good leader. And at the time when he got the news, you could just see he had given up. So my younger brother, Stephen, went right away and said, you know what, I'll donate. So they went through the testing, and it's fairly intense. The testing is so intense. And maybe about a week before, they said, well, we have to test you again. And they said, oh, Stephen, you're borderline diabetic. We can't go through it. So again, it was just a real situation where my brother had a hard time dealing with that. So you know what, and I did, right away, I said, I don't want to lose a brother, and I'll tell you that story why. And I decided, without telling my family, without telling my kids, I have an adopted daughter, the oldest of my kids, and I didn't tell them. I said, I'll go, I'll do it. So I have a scar here to remind me I'm a life giver. So I decided that I'm going to do this without letting my kids know, and my oldest daughter was so offended. He said, what if something happens to you? You're the only dad I had. So that's what happened, and it was, I felt really bad. I said, what if something happens to you? But my intentions was to help my brother survive, and he lived for another additional 11 years before he passed away. God is good all the time. Amen. You know, I'm so happy to be ministering a little bit again. I took some time off from the church for a while. After 40 years of ministry, I thought, you know what, I need a little break. Just going. And to be a chief and to be going into your PhD studies, I had no life. So I decided I need a rest for a while. I've never had rest, but at least a little bit of rest. But like I said, that time when I gave my brother life, he was able to travel, because if some of you that know people that are in dialysis, they can leave pretty well their homes. So he's able to travel and go places finally for the first time after how many years? And he lived for, like I said, for another additional 11 years after that, and I was so happy to have him. But going back to the residential school story, I'll just kind of give you an idea. In 1969, I went to my first day of residential school, and I remember lining up in a gymnasium like this, where I was just terrified. We had to line up. Everybody had grade 1 all the way and up to grade 12. And I was just the smallest in the room, and I had to go and line up to grade 1, and all that time I was just, what is this all about? Residential school is a very, very tough place to be, because you hear about the stories, and many people have, and even our Premier of Alberta said that never happened. I'm proof that it happened. So it's unfortunate how people try to quash and push things aside and say these things never happened. And so in 1969, in September, I went to school. October 1969, my brother decided, he was in residential school all his life. His name was Brian. He's 17 years old. I remember the night like it was yesterday. He came home from residential school. I don't know what got him upset. I don't know what happened in the school. But one evening, he just told my mom, "This is the last day you're going to see me." And off he went. He went and hung himself. 17 years old, he came home, but he didn't come home. Right? So I used to watch my mom. From that point on, we used to have a cattle operation and everything, and I was 7 years old. I used to watch my mom walk into the trees behind where our barns are, and she'd just go and cry for hours. And I was just crouched down like this watching, not knowing how can I help her. What am I going to do? How am I, but at that time I started to realize that there was some things that really happened. They were tragic. And up until 2009, one of my good friends was a song leader in our church. 2008, he said, "Randy, were you the lucky one?" And then he started telling me what happened behind closed doors. And he said, I can't seem to leave the alcohol alone because it kind of numbs the pain when I'm drinking. He eventually died in 2009. This guy, his name was Peter Morin. He could sing and he could just bring people to tears. But he could tell the pain wasn't, but he knew how to do these things. But all my older brothers are gone, except for one that's a little bit older than me. But he's mentally handicapped because because of all the abuse he was going through in school, one day he woke up, his mind was gone. So nobody can tell me residential school didn't happen. We need to address some of these things that the government and the church that were involved, and us as believers here, we have a role to play, right? We have an opportunity that's coming in the next little while to help the First Nations people across these lands. So the name that they were giving me is Wawasenam. You know what it means? He who throws the light. Isn't that ironic? He who throws the light. Or a coincidence. God knows what he's doing. And I know I'm really grateful to this day where I've been able to talk about this because in 1986, one of my late friends, he was going to die before, I didn't know he was going to die, but we sat at the playground and we were playing ball. And all of a sudden he sat me down, he said, his name was Charles Roasting, one of the greatest athletes around. Like that's how I became a good athlete, is because we used to call them boarders. They made you better at what you did because they said sports was a way out at least a few hours away from the residents, away from all the abuses and everything. They were allowed to be themselves and dream. But before he passed away, he said, Randy, one day you're going to have to tell our story. I can't tell it. There's too much pain. I have to sit and let somebody else. So you're going to be our voice for all our friends. Because standing here today in front of you, I just turned 60 years old. And 80%, almost 90% maybe, of my former classmates are in their graves. I don't know what about that age group, what happened, but something happened. So they said, well, you have to be our voice. And I really apologize the way I'm dressed here. I read the invitation said camp, so I thought. But they told you a little bit about my background. I'm fortunate because sports was my way out of residential school, and I almost made the NHL. I think if I stayed one more year in 1983, I would have made the NHL. It was just like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, God chose me at this time, at this moment, to do this. But you know what, the one thing I did do in 1983, I signed a contract. And you know, contracts, it's hard to get out of. At the time, I prayed. My wife was here in Muscatine, well, Hobima at the time, and I was in Billings, Montana, playing hockey. And the one night I said, you know, I'm tired of being lonely. I was always away from home since I was 15 years old playing junior hockey. And at the time, like, nobody really left home. Hobima to Edmonton was only an hour away, but it felt like a million miles away when you're 15 years old. So I at that time, one night I prayed, if there's a God out there, if you can help me get out of this contract, I will serve you. Big statement, right? Now there's one joke they always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. So I set out to do that, and then the next day I went and talked to the management. I told my wife, said, can you fly over here? I want to go home now. The next day I went to see management. I said, you know what, I think I had enough. I've done what I could. I just enjoy what I've done here, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity you gave me, because I played with Reggie Leach before he passed away. Before he retired, sorry. Before he retired, I said, that's not the right thing to say. Before he retired, many of you older individuals that are here would know who Reggie Leach is. Philadelphia Flyers, they won 4 cups. He was my roommate. That was such a great opportunity. When the first time he came in, that one night he flew in and he had all these hockey sticks. If you remember the old Titan hockey sticks, they're probably and you know what I didn't do? I didn't ask him for a stick, and to this day, but I had such a great opportunity being with him. He would keep me out after practice, shooting for an extra hour, skating for an extra hour. He just said, you're gonna do well. And I did do well. And so I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity. Now, I've, like Pastor Solo said, that I've been speaking all over, talking about my experience, because people that have passed on never have an opportunity to share their story. To even they're in their graves, or some people are afraid to say what happened to them. And what I did at the AUMA at the Shaw Conference Center, I didn't realize when the invitation came. I said, Randy, would you want to come and speak the Mirror Task? And I thought it was just a small group of people. So I said, sure, I'll do that. Not knowing it was at the Shaw Conference Center, but at least it's a chance. But before that, you know what I did? I went to the cemetery, went to all the former classmates I had, and you know what I did? I said, let's go. Let's go tell our story. So that's the journey. People have been afraid because I think my hearing's going a little bit. My face has been twisted. I've been hit with a ruler. You remember those wooden rulers back then? If you looked out the window. If you misspelled something, twist your ears, hit in the back of the head. Those kind of memories don't go away if someone tries to inflict pain on you. And the government sure tried to do away with First Nations people. Duncan Campbell Scott said that there's a statement, I'm not gonna paraphrase, I'm just gonna summarize kind of what he said, we will not quit until there's all the Native people are absorbed into society. They couldn't do it. We're still here. And we're thriving. We're starting to find our way. We're starting to be proud of our heritage. We're starting to be proud of our language. We're starting to be proud of the things that we were prevented from practicing. So me as a believer and as a chief, I have to support our people finding their comfort zone. So we have an opportunity. Each and every one of us as believers, in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, right? That whosoever, right? Whosoever. How do we partner with First Nations people? Those are the whosoevers, right? They'll have everlasting life. They desire to live. They desire to be well. They desire to be healed. So next week, July 25th, next Monday, a week from this Monday, the Pope is coming to Ermineskin, my community. And he's going to come and tell all people want to hear is 3 words. I am sorry. I am sorry. Maybe that's the first thing, and some will go to their graves knowing that that's all I wanted to hear. Maybe some of the people that came to residential school will say, I'm so happy. Or they might go the other way, right? And that's where we need each and every one of you, all the faith communities, to come together and say, don't try and come and save us. We just want you to be genuine. We want you to be really at peace, because you're not going to, don't think that you can start a conversation and say, I can fix you. No, you can't. It's going to take days and years, right? Maybe. But it's going to take work. Don't just say, well, I want to set up a camp meeting or whatever, a camp for 1 week. By the end of the week, everybody's going to be okay. No. That's why I'm telling everybody, said, the Pope's going to come say a few things to us and say, I'm sorry, then our community is going to be left holding the bag. How do we set ourselves up to be able to counsel people? You know, and so it's a real challenge. But at the same time, it's a real opportunity for us as faith. How do we come to this place to work together? How do we come to this place to help leaders in a community? When I seen the new building coming up, I was telling Solo, I said, how come I didn't know about that? I'm just surprised. I know where this place and where it's going to go, but I'm so thankful that my colleague, Chief Vern Saddleback, has always been promoting faith. You know, both him and I get attacked verbally, constantly, because I'm a person of faith. They always say, well, you're not a traditional, you're not into this thing, but I understand them. It's not my fault. My mom gave me back to the Lord when I was young because I had meningitis. And she always says, I gave you back to God so you can serve him. And I'm always thankful for it. And I always tell people that before you say any more, be careful, because you're throwing insults at my late mother. She was a beautiful lady, but she really had faith. And I know that's the reason why I'm still here, is because of her faith, because of her love, because of, she was merciful to people. I remember in our homes, there will always be, she always invited, we always had foster kids in our home. For God so loved the world. Remember that whosoever, she took that personally into her life and displayed it. She did that to help others that are struggling in their lives. And I remember walking into our living room where I'd have to be careful where I stepped, because everybody was all over the floor. They just showed up and they knew this is a place we can have rest. Isn't that what God wants us to do? Isn't that something for us as believers? One day we said we were struck in our lives where we realized that I need rest. I can have peace. I can be restored. So slowly we're getting into that place where the themes is truth, justice, healing, and reconciliation. Next week, the main theme in Musquatchie is truth. We have to confront what is truth. This really happened. There's one elder that always says there, Randy, there's your story, there's my story, then there's the truth. And you can look at the Bible, what is the truth? But also we have to recognize and unravel certain things, say, well, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what's happening. I think about that with my late brothers. I say, I'm still hanging in there no matter what. I'm in my I have one more year left on my term, but it kind of looks like I'm not going to finish this time, because I need to start writing. But as soon as the Pope comes to visit, my dissertation is going to start from 1969 and start writing about, okay, what is justice? What is peace? How do we find it? So I'll start relating some of my dissertation to my experiences and what do we need to do to talk about justice. I'm privileged. The other day, we have some problems at our AFN office. I don't know if you read it, the Assembly of First Nations. I didn't know this was going to happen the other day. When was it, Fran? About a couple days ago? The national chief from Ottawa drove all the way to my community and said, I want to meet with you. Let's go see these sites where the Pope is going to visit. Why do these things happen? I just happen to be in the right place. I just happen to be the chief of Ermineskin right now when the Pope decided, I want to come to your community. Right? I didn't ask for it, but what a privilege and what an opportunity. But at the same time, the challenge. When the unmarked graves were found last year in Kamloops, the 215, I cried for 2 weeks. Now next week, there's going to be 15,000 people that are allowed to sit in front of the Pope. I get to look at the 15,000 people for the first time, the survivors. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. It's going to be so emotional. So what I did is I started reaching out to people. I need your help as well, too. I started reaching out to people and said, you know what? I'm going to need counseling before this happens. We try to be strong, and I've always been trying to be strong for the last little while. But to see 15,000 people sitting in front of you, former survivors, and they're coming from all over the States as well, to see and witness the looks on their faces, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm bracing myself already. So we need that. It's a sad time. I've been in constant pain for the last little while since the announcement came. But knowing that, you know what, it's the First Nations people's time right now because we've been kind of neglected for the last little while. And they mentioned there earlier, developing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. You know what? It took us 8 years to get the S in peoples because they said, oh, you guys are not recognized as human beings. See the attitude out there? 8 years. So Musqueam alone have invested at least $15 to $20 million to draft that document. Musqueam drafted the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but people all over the world benefit from it. I don't think many people know that. So I'm thankful. I know I was given until 10:40, but I'm pretty well done because I promised myself I wouldn't cry this time. Because like I said, I don't usually do that, but this last little while since talking about my experience, it's been so painful, but I'm starting to feel better more and more because I know and I know and I know that I'm sharing those that didn't survive, but those that are survivors, those people that experienced residential school, they wanted this to be told. They want this to be straightened out. They want this to be revealed because it did happen. So I want to thank each and every one of you to allowing me to be here. Like I said, I thought I was addressing youth. Not all of you look like you're a youth, but thank you. But thank you for being here. And I hope that we can partner together. I'm so happy that the new building is coming up in Musqueam for MAMS, and it's just always been, I don't even know how we met with Pastor Solo. One day he showed up, and a friend of mine that runs recreation program said, oh, there's a pastor that helps out here. He never wants to get paid. And I meet him. And we've just hit it off since. I allowed him to, you know what, that conference that he came to, you know what, how much a person it cost? $6,000 a person. I just said I want him along. I just took a chance, and they said, oh, by all means, he can come. But you know what, God's influence is upon us. We may not feel it, we may not sense it all the time. Like for me, I get challenged as a leader, as a chief. Sometimes I feel like, oh man, I'm all alone. It's hard. But I still believe God will do something. So I want to thank each and every one. Hi.